The County of Hanau-Münzenberg was a territory within the Holy Roman Empire. It emerged when the County of Hanau was divided in 1458, the other part being the County of Hanau-Lichtenberg. Due to common heirs, both counties were merged from 1642 to 1685 and from 1712 to 1736. In 1736 the last member of the House of Hanau died and the Landgrave of Hessen-Kassel inherited the county. Geography. The County of Hanau-Münzenberg was positioned to the north of the river Main, stretching from the west of Frankfurt am Main eastwards through the valley of the river Kinzig to Schluchtern and into the Spessart Mountains to Partenstein. Capital was the town of Hanau. The counts had also castles in Windecken and Steinau and der Straße. For the following years, population counts of Hanau-Münzenberg.Due exist: 1,632 to 5,140 families, 1,707 to 6,706 families, 1,754 to 48,000 inhabitants. History. Emergence in 1452. After a reign of only 1 year, Count Reinhard III of Hanau died. The heir was his son, Philip I, only 4 years old. For the sake of the continuity of the dynasty after years of political fighting, his relatives and other important decision-makers in the county agreed not to turn to the 1375 primogeniture statute of the family, one of the oldest in Germany, but to separate the administrative district of Babenhausen from the county of Hanau and let the heirs, uncle and brother of the deceased, Philip I, have it in his own right as a county. This arrangement of 1458 allowed him to have a befitting marriage and offspring entitled to inherit, and so increased the chances of survival of the comital house. This created the line of Hanau-Lichtenberg. Later on, to distinguish the old county from Hanau-Lichtenberg, the part of the county which stayed with Philip I was called Hanau-Münzenberg. The history of Hanau-Münzenberg is dominated by a large series of guardianships for counts still minor when inheriting the county from their fathers. Without interruption, this happened during 6 successions between 1512 and 1638. Always the counts died in the late 20th or 30th, leaving behind a minor as successor. Most probably the reason was a hereditary disease. The effect of this was that the politics of expansion, which on the long term dominated the success of the lordship of Hanau and later the county of Hanau, came to a halt when Philip I died in 1500. First Reformation. Slowly but early Hanau-Münzenberg participated in the Reformation. To be exact, its Lutheran version. The Reformation was introduced gradually during the reign of Philip II. When church staff retired, the successor would be a Lutheran. As early as 1523, the pastor Adolf Arbogast was included in the chapter of the St. Mary's Church in Hanau, the central church of the county. When he was appointed, he explained that he wanted to spend little effort on Vespers and the daily Mass, but would instead concentrate on his sermons and putting forward the gospel. The real reformer of Hanau was his successor Philip Neuenheller MA. During his time in office, the new faith gained more and more ground. The Catholic faith was never officially banned. The number of Catholic priests steadily decreased, as they were not replaced when they retired. Also under the reign of Philip II started the project to replace the medieval fortifications of the town of Hanau by the latest in Renaissance fortification available. This investment became necessary due to the introduction of modern artillery the medieval fortification could not withstand. The new walls were placed outside the medieval ones and included a settlement, Vorstadt, which had developed outside the gates. Second Reformation. When Philip Ludwig I died in 1580, another guardianship had to be installed for the benefit of his successor, Philip Ludwig II. Still a minor, guardians became the Counts John VI, Count of Nassau-Dillenburg, Louis I, Count of Sayn-Wittgenstein, and Philip IV, Count of Hanau-Lichtenberg, who was replaced in 1585 by his son, Count Philip V of Hanau-Lichtenberg. The dominating figure in this constellation became the Count of Nassau. Additionally, Philip Ludwig's widowed mother, Countess Magdalena of Waldeck, remarried on 9 December 1581 Count John VII, the Middle, of Nassau-Siegen, the son of Count John IV. In consequence, Philip Ludwig II and his younger brother, Count Albrecht, joined the Nassau-Dillenburg court, a center of the Reformation movement in Germany and closely tied to the electorate of the Palatinate of the Rhine. The new ideas he encountered here greatly influenced his life and policies. By using his rights under the Quia Regio, ERUS religio rule, he changed the confession of his county to Calvinism in 1593. He succeeded with this nearly everywhere in his sphere of influence, except in a few villages in the district Bornheimerberg, which surrounded Frankfurt and the condominiums shared with the Roman Catholic Archbishop-Elector of Mainz. The villages in the vicinity of Frankfurt had strong ties to this Lutheran city, and a majority of the villages just went to Lutheran services in foreign Frankfurt territory. Also in the condominiums Philip Ludwig II shared with Mainz, he couldn't change anything, whether his subjects had become Lutheran during the Reformation or had remained Roman Catholic. With his marriage in 1596 to Katharina Belgica, third daughter of William the Silent, he gained a personal connection to one of the leading personalities of Calvinism in Europe. Modernization. The introduction of Calvinism and the location of the County of Hanau-Münzenberg, at only half a day's journey away from Frankfurt with its trade fairs, made Hanau an attractive place to settle for Calvinist refugees from France and later from the southern Netherlands. They were often wealthy traders and were attractive subjects for a ruler in need of tax revenues. In 1597 and 1604, the Count and the refugees entered into two treaties which gave them a large degree of self-government and founded the new town of Hanau, south to the historic medieval settlement. This proved to be a big success and initiated an economic growth for Hanau which lasted even into the 19th century. Both the towns, Old Hanau and New Hanau, were surrounded by a modern fortification of Baroque style. This proved to be a first-class asset in the following 30 Years' War. Philip Ludwig II also reinstated a Jewish community in Hanau. Space was allotted for the Jews on the southern fortifications of the historic town, which was no longer needed due to the new fortifications. This ghetto was not part of either town, but placed directly under the administrative control of the county. Count Philip Ludwig II also tried to get a university for his county by founding the Hohe Landesschule in Hanau. It was modeled on the Herborn Academy, where he had studied himself. Even so, it did not develop into a university but still exists today as a secondary school. 30 Years' War. The Calvinist county initially joined the forces of the Calvinist Frederick V but had to surrender to the Emperor and the Roman Catholic forces. The reigning count, now Philip Moritz, chose to change sides in order to retain the military command of his capital. He was appointed colonel and was expected to provide 3 companies. In November 1631, Swedish troops occupied Hanau and King Gustavus Adolphus of Sweden entered the city. Philip Moritz decided to change sides for the second time. He was a Calvinist, and for him choosing between the Roman Catholic Emperor and the Lutheran Swedish king may have been like a choice between Scylla and Charybdis. Gustavus Adolphus appointed him to colonel and gave him a Swedish regiment. As a reward for his changing sides, he gave him the district of Orb, the shares the electorate of Mainz had held in the former county of Rheineck and the districts of Patenstein, Lorhaupten, Biber and Alzenau. He gave Philip Moritz's brothers, Heinrich Ludwig and Jacob Johann, the town and district of Steinheim, which was also a former possession of Mainz. These possessions were lost when the Catholic side gained the upper hand after the Battle of Nordlingen in September 1634. Changing sides again would have made Philip Moritz seem untrustworthy, so he decided to flee to Metz and from the Virschal Rouen and Amsterdam to his Orange-Nassau relatives in The Hague and Delft. He left his youngest brother, Jacob Johann, as regent in Hanau, because Jacob Johann was considered politically neutral. Hanau as a well-developed fortress remained occupied by Swedish troops under General Jacob von Ramsay until 1638, who controlled the surrounding countryside from Hanau. He excluded Jacob Johann from any influence and so they later left the town too. From September 1635 to June 1636, Hanau was unsuccessfully besieged by imperial troops under General Guillaume de Lamboy. This siege proved the value of the modern defensive system, which had been constructed only a few years before. Thousands of refugees fled from the surrounding villages into the town. Hans Jacob Christoffel von Grimmelshausen used the occupation of Hanau by the Swedish and the siege as background in his picaresque novel Simplicissimus. After a 9-month siege, the city was relieved by an army under Landgrave Wilhelm V of Hessen-Kassel. He was Philip Moritz's brother-in-law, as he had married Philip Moritz's sister, Amalia Elizabeth. A church service was held annually to commemorate the relief. After 1800, this developed into an annual Lamboy festival. In 1637, Philip Moritz reconciled with the new emperor, Ferdinand III, and changed sides again. He returned to Hanau on the 17th of December 1637. General Ramsay ignored this and interned Philip Moritz in his own castle in Hanau. However, on the 11th of February 1638, the Wetterau Association of Imperial Counts, an association predominated by Calvinists, staged a coup against the Swedes and restored Philip Moritz to power. General Ramsay was arrested and taken to Dillenburg, where he died months later from injuries sustained during the action. But also Count Philip Moritz died only months after gaining power again. First reunion. Philip Moritz was succeeded by the last two counts of Hanau-Münzenberg, Philip Ludwig III, still a boy 9 years old when dying in 1641, and Johann Ernst, Count of Hanau-Münzenberg-Schwarzenfels, a cousin, dying childless after less than 3 months in office. With him the House of Hanau-Münzenberg became extinct. Policy's heir to it was Count Friedrich Casimir, Count of Hanau-Lichtenberg, then still a minor under the guardianship of Georg II of Fleckenstein-Dagstuhl. The relation to Count Johann Ernst was quite remote and the inheritance endangered in more than one way. The inheritance happened during the final years of 30 Years' War. The feudal overlords of Hanau-Münzenberg were partly enemy to Hanau and tried to hold back fiefs traditionally held by Hanau-Münzenberg. Further, the county of Hanau-Münzenberg was of Reformed confession. Friedrich Casimir and the county of Hanau-Lichtenberg were Lutheran, and even to reach the capital of Hanau-Münzenberg, the town of Hanau, proved a problem. Friedrich Casimir could do so only in disguise. The inheritance could finally be secured by 2 treaties. Parties to the first one of 1642 were Friedrich Casimir and the wealthy bourgeoisie of Hanau. the Count granted the Reformed faith as state religion within Hanau-Münzenberg, only reserving Lutheran services for himself and his court. Therefore, the citizens of Hanau, by far the strongest power within the war-devastated county, supported the accession of Friedrich Casimir. Parties to the second one of 1643 were Friedrich Casimir and Landgravine Amalia Elizabeth of Hessen-Kassel, and It, Countess of Hanau-Münzenberg, daughter to Philip Ludwig II, Count of Hanau-Münzenberg. She granted military and diplomatic support against the still resistant overlords. Therefore, Friedrich Casimir granted, should the House of Hanau be without male heirs, the inheritance of Hanau-Münzenberg to the descendants of Amalia, Elizabeth. That actually happened in 1736. These treaties secured the unification of the two Hanau counties under one ruler and saved Hanau-Münzenberg as a unit. Against the Treaty of Accession of 1642, Friedrich Casimir tried to enlarge the influence of the Lutherans within Hanau-Münzenberg. During the first 20 years of his reign, the Lutheran services were limited to the chapel of his castle in Hanau, but due to growing numbers from 1658 to 1662, an own church building for the Lutherans was erected in the town against the protest of the Reformed majority, the Johanniskisch. Both parties struggled against each other for decades, tried to prevent, unsuccessfully, mixed marriages, and even fought one another. An additional treaty of 1670 allowed the Lutherans their own church organization. This resulted in two parallel churches within the county of Hanau-Münzenberg, each one having its own administration. Therefore, a lot of villages in Hanau-Münzenberg had a set of Reformed church, school, vicarage and cemetery, and another one for the Lutherans. Only the Enlightenment and the economic crises resulting out of the Napoleonic Wars led to the Hanau Union, which ended this double structure in 1818. Sibylle Christina van Holt-Dessau, the widow of Count Philip Moritz, had received Steinau Castle as her dowager seat. As widow of a ruling count, she could raise substantial claims against the county. To avoid this, it was decided to marry Friedrich Casimir to the widow, who was 44 years old at the time, almost 20 years older than him. An added advantage of this marriage was that she was a Calvinist, which calmed the majority of the population. The marriage with the elderly widow was plagued by differences and remained childless. Shortly before his death, Friedrich Casimir adopted his nephew Count Philip Reinhard. Economy: Friedrich Casimir tried to implement mercantilism into Hanau-Münzenberg, severely devastated by the effects of 30 Years' War. A leading role in this is claimed for his advisor Johann Beecher. A successful achievement was the foundation of a factory to produce faience, the first in Germany. On the other hand, the Count's extravagant initiative to lease Guiana from the Dutch West India Company was a devastating experiment. These Hannoish Indies never became a reality but led his county to the rim of bankruptcy. So in 1670 his nearest relatives staged a palace revolution, trying to kick Friedrich Casimir out of office. This did not work entirely, but Friedrich Casimir was put under the guardianship of his relatives by Emperor Leopold, and the Count's possibilities to stage new experiments were severely curtailed. Separated again, Friedrich Casimir died in 1685. His inheritance was divided between his two nephews, Count Philip Reinhard, who inherited Hanau-Münzenberg, and Count Johann Reinhard III, who inherited Hanau-Lichtenberg. Both were sons of Friedrich Casimir's brother Count Johann Reinhard II. So Hanau-Münzenberg was on his own again. It was then still in a phase of recovery from the devastations of 30 Years' War, but also some remarkable achievements took place. There was a lot of public building for government, including Philippsruhe Castle and church. In lots of villages a second Lutheran church was erected and often called Reinhardskirche after the reigning count. Second reunion. When Count Philipp Reinhard died in 1712, Count Johann Reinhard III inherited the County of Hanau-Münzenberg, and for a last time both counties were united into one County of Hanau, with Count Johann Reinhard III, the last male member of the Hanau family, died in 1736. Hanau-Münzenberg and Hanau-Lichtenberg fell to different heirs. Due to the Treaty of Succession of 1643, Hanau-Münzenberg was inherited by the Landgraviate of Hesse-Kassel. Hanau-Lichtenberg fell to the Landgraviate of Hesse-Darmstadt because Countess Charlotte of Hanau-Lichtenberg, only daughter of Johann Reinhard III, was married to the heir of Hesse-Darmstadt, reigning as Landgrave Louis VIII later. Regarding the question if the administrative district of Babenhausen was part of Hanau-Münzenberg or Hanau-Lichtenberg, nearly led into a war of both Landgraviates in 1736 and into an extensive lawsuit at the highest courts of the Holy Roman Empire. The lawsuit ended with a compromise to divide the administrative district of Babenhausen into two equal parts between them in 1762. But it took until 1771 to realize this. Secundogeniture within the Landgraviate of Hessen-Kassel. When the inheritance came to Hesse and Kassel, technically Frederick I was sovereign there, but he had become King of Sweden, and so had placed his younger brother William VIII in charge of the Landgraviate. Frederick I waived his inheritance of Hanau-Münzenberg in favor of his younger brother, so Wilhelm VIII became Count of Hanau-Münzenberg in his own right. In 1751 King Frederick died and William VIII succeeded him as Landgrave in Kassel. The next heir, Frederick II, had secretly become Roman Catholic. When his father received this news, finally he was not amused at all. He tried to secure that Frederick II couldn't change the confession of his lands in any thinkable way. One measure he took was to transfer the county of Hanau-Münzenberg immediately to his grandson, William IX. William, still a minor when his grandfather died, was put under the guardianship of his mother, Princess Mary of Great Britain, a daughter of King George II of England, excluding her Roman Catholic husband. So Hanau-Münzenberg was governed by Princess Mary from 1760 to 1764, and afterward by her son William IX. Only in 1785 he succeeded in Hessen-Kassel. So for nearly half a century after the acquisition of Hanau-Münzenberg by Hessen-Kassel in 1736, it stayed secundogeniture most of the time. Only from 1786 on the integration into the Landgraviate took place gradually. Wilhelm IX used his reign in Hanau-Münzenberg of more than 20 years to develop his own policies. He took to building and developing the economy, most representative for this becoming the amusement facility of Wilhelmsbad east of Hanau, and he started here with renting troops to the British Crown. Later on, a contingent of about 2,400 soldiers recruited in Hanau-Münzenberg served during the American Revolutionary War for King George III, an uncle to William IX. During this time the brothers Grimm were born in Hanau, Principality of Hanau. The Landgraviate of Hessen-Kassel was elevated an electorate in 1803. William IX became William I. The County of Hanau-Münzenberg, the Principality of Hanau. When the French occupied the lands of William I in 1806, the new principality was put under military rule until 1810 and then became part of the Grand Duchy of Frankfurt. In 1813 the principality was restored to William IX. As an administrative unit it existed until 1821, when the territorial structure of the whole state of the Electorate of Hessen was reorganized. The title Prince of Hanau stayed within the titles of the Elector until 1866, when the Electorate of Hessen was annexed by the Kingdom of Prussia. Today's main Kinzigkreis represents about the area of the former County of Hanau-Münzenberg. The last elector, Frederick William, gave the title Princess of Hanau to his wife Gertrude Falkenstein, a common he could marry only morganatically. Descendants of this marriage bear it as part of the name still. Princess of Hanau in Horovitche.